Welcome back to the Explainer. So, quick question. Did you know the average adult makes over 35,000 remotely conscious decisions every single day? It's wild, right? And here's the catch. Most of those are purely reactive. Well, today we're going to do something a little different. I want you to think of this not just as learning something new, but as a literal software upgrade for your brain. We're talking about installing Cognitive OS version 2.0. Basically, we're upgrading our minds from this emotionally driven reactive state into a strategic analytical powerhouse. So, let's dive right in and look at exactly how we can rewire our thinking to handle those complex, high-stakes situations with absolute clarity.
Here is the installation menu for today's upgrade. First, upgrading your Cognitive OS. Second, Gear 1, deconstruction. Third, Gear 2, observation. Fourth, Gear 3, logical inference. And finally, mastering the analytical engine.
All right, Section 1, upgrading your cognitive OS, the reactive versus the analytical mind.
Before we can actually run this upgrade, we've got to diagnose the default state we're all currently running on and why it totally fails us when the stakes get high. In our default setting, what we call intuitive or reactive thinking, our brain is fast, sure, but it's highly emotional and it almost exclusively treats surface symptoms. When we're stuck in this mode, we're basically just reacting to chaos. But the upgrade, analytical thinking, that is entirely evidence-based. Instead of just swatting blindly at symptoms, it targets the actual structural root causes. It's incredibly strategic. Think of it like this. The reactive mind puts out small fires, but the analytical mind redesigns the entire building so the fires don't start in the first place.
Now this shift literally rewires our responses. Look at the blueprint here. For our trigger response, instead of treating those immediate surface symptoms, Cognitive OS 2.0 isolates the structural root causes. And for decision-making, we shift entirely away from emotional, bias-driven guesswork. Instead, we move to a process that is evidence-based, heavily weighted by facts, and totally deductive. We're essentially just ripping the subjective guesswork right out of the equation so we can actually solve those really complex, high-stakes problems.
So what does this new operating system actually do at its core? Well, analytical thinking is the systematic process of breaking down complex problems, data, or situations into smaller, manageable components. Notice the key word in there, systematic. It's not a gut feeling, it's not a hunch, it is a highly active process of dismantling chaos so you can actually figure out what you're dealing with.
I want you to imagine a massive, messy tangle of variables coming your way. The kind of complex problem that makes our default brain completely panic. But when you pass that terrifying tangle through the mechanism of this analytical engine, it strips it all down. What comes out the other side are clean, manageable components. It seamlessly blends objective facts with practical judgment, and that's what drives truly strategic decision-making.
Now, to make this engine hum, we need three core components. We call these the three gears of the analytical mind. Gear 1 is deconstruction. Gear 2 is observation. And Gear 3 is logical inference. And the coolest part? Each of these gears comes with its own highly specific maintenance tool to keep it running perfectly. This isn't just some abstract theory. It's a practical, working machine that we can actually learn to operate. So let's install these gears piece by piece.
Okay, Section 2. Gear 1. Deconstruction. Isolating the core issue.
This is where we strip away the noise to find out what's actually broken. But here's the major hurdle, and honestly, it's a question we all face every single day. How do we get past the surface noise to hit the true structural cause? Because let's face it, our environments are incredibly noisy, and we've been practically conditioned to just get totally distracted by loud, immediate symptoms. It's kind of like trying to find a subtle software bug while the server room alarms are literally blaring right in your ear. So to bypass all that noise, we use the maintenance tool specifically designed for Gear 1. It's called the 5 whys method. Step 1, flat out refuse to treat the symptoms. Step 2, repeatedly ask why. And step 3, trace the causality downward until you hit the root. Think about it. If a machine breaks down, you don't just replace the fuse and walk away, right? You ask why it blew. Oh, the motor overworked. Well, why? Because the bearing lacked lubrication. Why? Because the pump failed. You go 5 questions deep and bam, you find the real root of the problem.
Think of your problem like an iceberg. That jagged, chaotic noise up at the top, that's just a surface symptom. Most people stop right there. But true analytical thinking requires systematically stripping that noise away. By asking why roughly 5 times, you are quite literally drilling down through all those secondary layers until you hit that glowing core at the very bottom. That is your structural root cause.
Moving right along, Section 3, Gear 2, Observation, Mapping Hidden Patterns.
We've got our raw material from Gear 1, so now we actually need to make sense of it. And there is a massive, massive distinction to make here. Analytics is not just looking, it is seeing. Looking is entirely passive. Seeing, on the other hand, is active. Meticulous observation requires tracking trends, understanding really complex cause and effect relationships, and uncovering those invisible correlations that you would absolutely never notice at just a casual glance.
But here's the kicker. Our human brains are notoriously terrible at spotting patterns in raw numbers. Seriously, spreadsheets are incredibly hard to read, and the patterns just stay completely hidden in all those rows and columns. But when we force observation by converting those numbers into visual landscapes, like charts and graphs, something magical happens. The anomalies naturally reveal themselves with almost zero effort on our part. When you take a chaotic, scattered cloud of raw data points, it is practically impossible to decipher any real meaning. But if you pass it through the filter of data visualization, it immediately transforms into this clean, beautifully readable sine wave. The hidden trends are explicitly mapped out right in front of you. And that is your essential tool for Gear 2, forcing observation through data visualization.
Next up, Section 4, Gear 3, Logical Inference, Weighing the Evidence.
This is the final gear, and this is where facts and strict deductive reasoning take the wheel. When making really difficult choices, we so often let our feelings completely dictate our actions. To stop this from happening, we use the maintenance tool for Gear 3, decision matrices. A decision matrix forces us to list out all our pros and cons, but more importantly, it makes us assign an explicit mathematical weight to each factor based purely on objective importance. It forces the subjective to become completely objective.
When you use a comparative matrix like this, emotional bias, all those irregular, chaotic, messy feelings, it simply floats away. By assigning weighted values, you balance the scale objectively. You are literally letting the math dictate the logic. You're drawing sensible, evidence-based conclusions rather than those reactive, knee-jerk ones that, let's be honest, you might really regret later.
And that brings us to Section 5, Mastering the Analytical Engine, the System Reboot.
Let's bring all three gears together now and see this thing in full, uninterrupted operation. This continuous loop is the ultimate goal. A complex problem enters the system. First, we use deconstruction via those 5 whys to strip away the irrelevant junk. Then, that isolated problem flows into Stage 2, where we uncover hidden patterns using visualization. And finally, it routes into Stage 3, where we use our decision matrices to conclude without any bias. The output? A beautifully logical, highly strategic decision.
Okay, let's recap this as a quick start guide so you can actually begin applying it immediately. Step 1. Strip problems down to their absolute essentials. Step 2. Dig deep for the root causes using the 5 whys. Step 3. Convert that raw data into visuals to spot those hidden trends. And Step 4. Neutralize your own emotional bias using weighted decision matrices.
Think of this as your ultimate reference manual. It's everything we just discussed packed into one powerful framework. Isolate the core issue, dig deep for those root causes, visualize your data to spot the trends, and neutralize your bias with decision matrices. This framework right here, this is the complete operating system. It seamlessly blends objective facts with practical judgment.
And just like that, your cognitive upgrade is officially complete. You now possess the tools to systematically deconstruct pure chaos into logical, strategic solutions. So, the only question remaining is this. If your gut instinct has been steering you wrong this whole time, what complex problem in your life are you going to deconstruct first today? Take this framework, apply it to your toughest challenges, and watch the noise just fade away. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.